You are only one decision away from a totally different life. Just one. It may be big, it may seem simple, but it can change your world. What is your one decision? In this podcast, I will tell stories, give you tools, inspire you, and hopefully give you strength to make that one decision. Remember that inaction is an action, indecision is a decision. Purposeful decisions allow you to have control over the direction you go. Make that one purposeful decision and see where it takes you. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome back to the One Decision Podcast with Dr. Connie Swain. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, make sure to like, follow, ring, do all the things you do, and share this podcast with your friends and family. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook under the name One Decision with Dr. Connie Swain. And today I'm so excited to have my friend, Chief Steve Stanford of the Bridgeport Police Department. Hey, Chief, welcome.
How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm good. I really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. And I know you're really busy. I know you told me a moment ago you've got pep rally. Of course, it's game night and just all the wonderful things that goes along with being the chief of police for the city of Bridgeport. Right.
Absolutely. How did we last all summer without football? I mean,
yeah, right. I know. So I know you also are acting right now as the assistant city manager for the city of Bridgeport. And for those who don't live here, I just do want to clarify, it is Bridgeport, Texas, not Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Yeah.
So what other roles?
And Bridgeport's not by the coast.
Right.
Yeah. When I say Bridgeport, everyone, oh, you're down by the coast. Is that by Galveston? No, it's a long ways from Galveston.
No, not even close. Yeah. And you don't ride horses to work and, all those things.
Right. I wish I did.
Right. So, as I said, you're chief of the police department. How big is your department?
Well, we have 20 officers. I have about 10 civilians, full-time, part-time. So I consider us a 30-person department. We provide police services. We provide also, that includes communications, emergency communications, so dispatchers for the city. And those, right now, they're all gals in there. Yeah. All those ladies, they do a fantastic job for us. They're 24 hours, 7 days a week. Yeah. So after hours, we take all the calls for the city, any kind of water leak, electrical issue. We have our own utility here in Bridgeport. And then, of course, streets or anything else associated with the city, that we receive all those phone calls. So we're basically the central nerve center for the city of Bridgeport, 24 hours a day. We got that personnel also includes code enforcement and animal control as well. We do have a animal shelter here in Bridgeport. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a fully operational public safety center that provides around the clock service to our citizens.
Yes. I know your K-9 officer, who is Precious Marissa, and Remy. Oh, yeah. But I know she doesn't only provide services for Bridgeport. Are y'all kind of back up it with that with other departments?
Yes. So we, of course, for a long time, we have mutual aid agreements with the sheriff's office and Boyd Police Department, Rome Police Department, Texas DPS, the Highway Patrol. So, but just in the last month or so, we've been put on a on-call rotation with the Wise County Sheriff's Office to kind of help their canines maybe get a day off or a week off. Oh. I'm sorry. And so Marissa backfills that. And so the county has around the clock access to a canine, or drug canine, And that's what Remy is. He's single purpose dog, only narcotics. And so she does a great job for us, as you know. She's very personable. She's involved in the community on many different levels with our Unidos program, which is a Spanish-speaking program, community program we put on for our citizens, and it's been a fantastic program. We have so many Hispanics that speak only Spanish here in Bridgeport, and so I felt like a few years ago we needed some type of program to target that population, and that's been a very positive program for us. And Marissa and Officer Elledge did a fantastic job for us leading that program.
That's incredible. So again, as I said earlier, you also serve as the assistant city manager. Do you have any other roles you carry in the city?
Well, yeah, I'm the lead janitor here for the city, I guess. So pretty much, I give you a little background on myself. I started in law enforcement in 1996 at the Wise County Sheriff's Office as a jailer, and I put myself through Night Police Academy, and back and forth nights and days, but primarily I worked there at the Sheriff's Office for about 13 months, a little over a year, and then I came here at the age of 20 to the city of Bridgeport, and I actually had to train while I was 20 years old. I couldn't even buy my own gun, and I couldn't buy my own ammunition. And so I trained as a non-uniformed civilian. And so the midnight of my 21st birthday, I clocked in as a single officer unit, which I would never do now as a police chief. But I still remember my first shift. I stopped 22 cars and I wrote 9 tickets, and I took 3 people to jail.
Oh my
God. And I wrecked my car. So
oh wow.
So anyway, it's been a great career for me. 25 plus years now with the city. I also serve as assistant city manager, and so the things that our city manager doesn't necessarily want to handle or so forth, I get those delegated to me. But the last year's been really tough on us here at the city. We went through a change in city manager. We had different personnel issues that we had to deal with, and so I know this is a faith-based podcast. There was many nights and many days and many lunch breaks that I spent on my knees praying and asking for God's guidance, because quite frankly, regardless of our titles, I think we must be connected with God. We must have that daily connection, yes. Because if it's up to us, we're bound and determined to mess it up, right?
Right.
And so we got to have godly wisdom in our lives, and so we have a fantastic city manager now, Mike Murray. He's a man of faith, and so we are starting to turn the page now, hopefully, and it's a lot of good things happening.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So you've always been in Wise County in your law enforcement career?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I basically have grown up here all my life. I as a young child, I lived in California for a short time and then Tennessee for a short time. But I grew up out at Lake Bridgeport and went to school in Chico, graduated Chico High School in 1994, and have been here ever since. For a short time, I was EMT.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was EMT for Wise County for a short time. I was a sergeant here in the EMT, worked 7 days a week for a long time. That was miserable.
Yeah.
But you had to do what you had to do, making $20,000
exactly.
a year back then. It was ridiculous.
Well, in that staying, talking about staying within the county and staying in law enforcement, that's kind of rare, isn't it? Is it fairly rare around here? I know there's a challenge. As you know, we have law enforcement, have had law enforcement family members and this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
And being small departments, I know there's some challenges being able to compete with other departments and their salary and benefits and that sort of thing. So was there ever a time you wanted to leave? And speak to that.
Yeah, it is rare. I don't know if I'm the dumb one or what, but I consider myself a pretty loyal person, and I wanted to stay. Obviously, there's been times I like anybody else, wanted to leave and go do something different, but I found myself at critical moments in my life looking at the big picture of what I wanted to do with my career. And, going to Fort Worth or Dallas, or those suburbs down there, it didn't really, it didn't appeal to me because I know a lot of people down there. I know a lot of chiefs now, and they have the same struggles as we do here. It's a different, it's a different scale, obviously, but the challenges are all the same, except for a lot of those people don't get to make an impact in their community.
Right.
And so I get value out of that because of the connection of my hometown. Yes, there is a little comfort there. I understand that too. But when I go into a restaurant and I have somebody come up to me and say, "Thank you for taking me out of jail," and I'm looking at them going, "I don't know who you are because you definitely don't look like the person I took to jail maybe 10 years ago." And they sit down and they actually tell me who they are, and I remember the case and so forth, and they are now clean and they're married, they got kids. That doesn't happen in the Metroplex. You may never see that person again. And so having that connection with the community has always meant a lot to me. I think that's why you see that we're focused on that community impact and that community engagement here at the city, because I believe that if we don't have those relationships in the community, it makes our job even more difficult. And that's what's important to me. And that's why I've chosen to stay as long as I have. And God's always, Connie, God has always placed those people in my life at the times that I needed to leave or wanted to leave, that said, no, this door is still open. You still need to stay. And for whatever reason, I've decided to do that. And it's been great. I can't ask for a better career, and I have total fulfillment from that. So.
Well, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you about. Was it a conscious decision for you to choose to be so involved in the community? I've lived in a lot of different places in my life, and I have never seen a police chief as involved in the community, and not just involved, but connected and intentionally so with the community. So was that a conscious decision or just a natural outflow of who you are?
Well, no, it's not. It's completely opposite of who I am. Yeah, and I'll just tell you why. And I know you had wanted to ask me why I chose to get into law enforcement. So I'm going to answer that question, and it's going to answer your question you just asked as well. So growing up, I'll just tell you my story real quick. I was raised as a young child. My parents got divorced when I was 4 years old. I was raised by my mother, who was an alcoholic, who was also abused prescription medication, and had multiple husbands and boyfriends and so forth. The lifestyle was terrible. My grandparents came and got me and my brother at 8 when I was about 7.5 years old, close to 8 years old. We were in Tennessee living in a RV camper, basically starving. We had head lice. We were just poor as dirt. And my grandparents came and picked us up. I don't remember this, but they told us that before we left the Tennessee state line, we had already ate a half a bushel of apples that they picked up at a fruit stand. But regardless, they picked us up. And I just said a minute ago, God has always placed people in my life at the right time. And it was obvious that God had his hands on my grandparents when they came and picked up my brother and I. They brought us back here to Bridgeport, family ranch out at Lake Bridgeport. And we were raised from that point on by my grandparents. I lived with them until I graduated high school and got out on my own. And I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. I knew I wanted to stop the addiction. I wanted to stop alcoholism. I wanted to stop child abuse. Pretty much any abuse you could come up with, I either experienced or saw it as a child. And so I wanted to take everybody to jail. And so early on in my career, I had no intention of making a connection in the community and building those relationships. I wanted to take every bad guy to jail. And early on in my career, I did. I took a lot of people to jail and fought a lot of cases over the years. And as I progressed in my career, in 2002, Randy Singleton, who's now our mayor, but he came here from the city of Hearst as a police chief here for Bridgeport. And Randy and I worked together for 13 years every day. Actually, this was his office at one point. And I sat across the desk from him, and through his mentorship and through his direction, he changed the course of who I am as a person and a police officer, but also the position of the police department. So what we were going to do, what we were going to focus on, because I quickly learned, and as you know, in your connection to law enforcement, the aggravating part was I would make all these arrests, and let's say I don't know the percentages off the top of my head, but let's say 30% of them would not change, or 30% would change, 70% would not change, but I would see them on the next shift, they'd already be out of jail, already doing the same things they were doing.
Yes.
And so what we had to do, we had to develop a mindset to build that connection in our community. So we started doing that, making an intentional effort, and started building connections and relationships in the community. And you see that on our cars, you see that on our patches, you see that on our taglines. A partnership with the community is our motto. And so Randy, he retired in 2015, and I became chief. I was his assistant chief for about 5 years prior to his retirement. And so we just basically took what he laid as a foundation and started building upon that. And so that was not my natural, I guess, or maybe initial reaction to law enforcement. It was take everybody to jail because of the abuse and the addiction and the crime side of it. So now I know that relationship is so important in the community because of things like this, what you're doing here, reaching out and talking to people and building those connections, and then that's going to be sent out to other people. And hopefully through that, we can build more connections with our community, that the validation of what we do in the community, people will build trust and come back and start reporting these things. And so we've seen an increase as far as population. We've experienced a decrease in crime overall as far as violent crime. Now there's obviously still drugs. There's still the disturbances that are basically secondary to drug addiction and so forth. Mental health is a huge issue, a lot of mental health calls. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, Bridgeport was the Wild West. And man, it was crazy. We had disturbances, fights, and shootings and stabbings, and it seemed like everybody that we dealt with fought the police. So nowadays, and I'll say this too, we did not have the support in the community at all. There was no legitimacy of what we did and who we were in the community. Whereas today, we have fantastic support. We have fantastic relationships with our community members and with our council and our city government. So it's a completely night and day. The community is completely night and day, and the support is completely night and day what it was in the 90s.
That's incredible. I always say that what operates at the head filters down. And I know that um, Mayor Singleton's impact on the city as a whole throughout his tenure as chief and now as mayor has made a big difference, because that is a reflection really of who he is as a person,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
caring about people. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. You're exactly right. And I hope I didn't cut you off there. You
no,
cut
you're
out just
fine. No, that's fine.
that is who Randy Singleton is, and you know, he is technically still my boss in some form, but and I would say this regardless, he is by far the best mentor, the best leader, the greatest example of a man that I've had in my life for the last 25 years. I lost my grandparents in the early 2000s. And I would say that about them too. They were fantastic human beings and a great example of Christ here on earth. And but Randy has those same characteristics, and he's a fantastic person. What you see is what you get, and his heart for people and his heart for Christ is just amazing to watch. And you know, he's just a great person.
Yeah.
They need to name buildings after that guy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. We need clones. We need a lot of clones. So,
Well, you know, it's funny. I told him that a while back, and he said, "Well, when I die, y'all name the sewer plant after me. That'll be good enough."
that's greatness. That is greatness. So, you talked about, you know, your life growing up and how you wanted to put everybody in jail. So, was it a conscious decision to become a police officer, or is it just something you kind of always wanted to do? As you know, the theme here is one decision could change your life. So was it a single decision, or was it just a natural progression in your life?
Well, it's a multitude of things, really. Quite frankly, when I was a teenager, I was a rebellious person.
Oh.
I was the kid that was not. I wasn't a bad kid. I wouldn't say, but I had this chip on my shoulder, right? And I wanted to prove the world that I had significance. And my brother Scott, who I don't know if you know Scott or not. I don't think I've ever asked you that. Scott runs Victory Christian Academy in Decatur.
Oh, okay.
And so he too is a great man of God, and so he and I, you know, growing up, and we knew what to do. We were, I think, polite young men and hardworking young men, but we both had a chip on our shoulder, and we all know what the reason that is, right? Is because you feel unfulfilled and insignificant in the world. So to answer your question about law enforcement, I had always been intrigued about law enforcement. My uncle was the chief deputy at the sheriff's office when pretty much all my life, and he was involved with the sheriff's office in some form. And so I was around it. I saw it, but the side that really, the decision I really wanted to make when I got into law enforcement was I wanted to put the stop to, you know, the abuse and the addiction and the drug addiction and alcoholism and so forth, and everything that came along with that kind of lifestyle. I wanted to try to do my best. I wanted to clean up the world, right? And I wanted to be a game changer, and worked extremely hard at doing that. And of course, when you're doing that on your own, trying to change everybody on your own, you can't do it, regardless if you have handcuffs or not. You may do it for a temporary period, but the long-term change doesn't happen unless that's a decision for them, between them and God. So it's funny. I would have pastors, specifically Jeff Little, who's now a pastor at Milestone Church, is a giant church in Keller. He would ride out with me, and we would minister to people on the way to jail.
Oh.
And you know, I tell you, when you see somebody hit the end of the rope and that's the best time to get them, right? They're very attentive when they're looking
Right.
at 20 years in prison, you know? And so Jeff, I know Jeff and I, uh, you know, made an impact with a few of those people in those conversations. And I'm confident that some of those people changed that, and they have changed. I've had people come up to me and tell me that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different things in my life, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't mention this before, but prior to me going into law enforcement, right before 1996, it was April. It was not April. It was Mother's Day, whatever date that was, in 1996. Uh, I had found my mom shot in the head on the floor, unresponsive,
Oh,
at her house. So she had moved back to the ranch, and she was married to a guy. And as I drove in that day, Mother's Day, and we'd been out shopping for Mother's Day's presents, trying to rebuild that relationship that had been so just distorted over the years. Uh, anyway, he had told me they had a fight. I met him at the front gate, and he was leaving for the night. Just a few minutes later, I'd gotten home. We all lived on this big compound out the lake, and heard sirens go by. And I knew immediately, I knew something was wrong. And so I went down there and I found her laying on the floor, and she'd been shot in the head. Now 25 years in the law enforcement, I'm pretty confident that what was said and what was done in that case probably wasn't exactly accurate. I'm not saying it wasn't self-inflicted. I think she had something to do with it, but I don't know, and I don't want to get into that today. But the end of the day, that was Mother's Day. My son, oldest son, who's an officer in Coppell now, who, by the way, I just had a grandbaby.
I saw that.
Most perfect thing on earth.
I know, that's
But
awesome. Congratulations. Yes, you've got a
thank
beautiful
you so much.
family. Beautiful family.
God's blessed me. But my mom, that was on Mother's Day, and then Derek was about to be born a month later, in June of '96. And so, anyway, that happened, and I immediately became a bitter person about, why is God allowing her to come back in my life after all these years, and now this has happened. So I was really ticked off, right?
Sure.
And so processing all of that, and of course, now knowing what I know now, knowing the things that we do now, Connie, in law enforcement, here at Bridgeport, we have an emotional wellness coach that goes through with officers and with me and dispatchers and handle these trauma events, right?
That's incredible.
And it helps us process those things, and that person is a godly person, so she leads by a godly curriculum. But for 9 years, my mom, she was not supposed to live. Okay, she had several surgeries and so forth, but she did live. She learned how to walk, learned how to talk, learned how to eat, feed herself, learned who all of us were again. So you had this person that was an alcoholic and abused narcotic prescription drugs and some other narcotics. But when she got shot in the head, she was not an addict anymore. After she went through rehab, physical rehab, she was not an alcoholic anymore.
Wow.
And so God showed her a little grace there, right? And showed
God
us.
healed her through that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so fast forward, in 2009, I was working here. I was with Randy Singleton, who was a chief at the time. And this is right before Sergeant Randy White had died, got killed in the line of duty. So in February of 2009, I was dispatched to her fatal car accident.
Oh my
right out here on the lake.
Gosh.
So
Wow.
Again, it was just crazy. But throughout those years, that she wasn't an alcoholic, she was a total different person. I was able to forgive her for all the nonsense that had taken place over my life through the help of godly counsel
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
church. And it was just a fantastic feeling now that when now she's laying, she's passed at this point, and some of my family members had not forgave her.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch them process that versus me, and what God allowed in my own life, the forgiveness to take place and the grace that I had for her, it was fantastic for me. It was sad to watch other family members struggle,
Mm-hmm.
but I was at peace. I was at peace, you know? And
Right.
so it's law enforcement. I say all of that stuff that happened as a child prepared me for law enforcement.
Uh-huh.
You know, the things that right before I started at the sheriff's office that happened
Mm-hmm.
when she was shot, that prepared me for law enforcement. The fatal accident prepared me to deal with those things. But the cool part uh, is God has allowed me to share that story multiple times. I've shared it at church. I've shared it for life groups and different uh, platforms. I shared it at Chico for their graduating class, uh, and multiple times at Bridgeport. Every time I tell that story, somebody always reaches out to me and says, "Man, I had a struggle with my mom," or this or that, and I get to use those events as sovereign that God is. He allows us to use those events to help other people, and we have that opportunity. I could take all of that and still be that bitter soul that I was
Mm-hmm.
back in the '90s, and I would be not where I'm at today, and I know that. And but so that is my short story
That's
of my
incredible.
yeah,
Well,
and you
that
know,
I love that God, He is so good that you were able to, as horrific as that was, to see her shot, right?
right,
As awful as that was, to then be able for God to redeem that relationship and you be able to have a relationship with her without the drugs. Like I'm sure she was a totally different person. And for
she
God to,
was. I mean, absolutely, yeah,
I love that story. I mean, and how that
yeah.
must have been for
You
you.
know, the deal is God allowed the healing to take place, and it took
Mhm.
several years. It wasn't like
Oh,
overnight, right?
oh, sure.
But you know, she wasn't a motherly figure per se,
Mhm.
because she was that was beyond her capacity at the time, right?
Mhm. Uh-huh.
So, but I was able to have some type of relationship with her
Right.
without being mad or without having anger or resentment, and I think that's so important as I navigated life is to
Mhm.
realize that the circumstances that happen to you don't define who you are,
Right.
but how you respond is what is most important. So,
Mhm. Um, I we I've got a couple other things I do want to touch on, but before I do want to ask you, and obviously you're strong in your faith, and at some point you met Jesus and you gave your life to him. So touch on that just briefly, and how you talked earlier how you couldn't have made it through the earlier years. Talk about the importance and how you've seen the Lord's impact in your role in law enforcement.
absolutely. Well, and I'm not. I know this might sound bad, but I'm not. I'm just poking fun, right, at
Okay, yeah,
religion.
that's okay.
Okay. So, I mean, this is all a good humor here. So, the Baptists do what Baptists do, right? They had a Halloween event, but they do what they do, and they changed the name from Halloween to Nuwala. They
Oh,
spelt
exactly.
Halloween
So
backwards.
it's got to be the fall festival. Yes, no, I totally get it. Yeah, yep.
So, and I love Baptists. I grew up in the Baptist church, although my dad was a Pentecostal preacher. But
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
that's a whole nother story. I didn't know what I was doing and where I was going on the weekends, you know. But
Mhm.
uh, anyway, no, with all seriousness, it was my brother was a huge role model for me, and he was 4 years older than me. Uh, And I tell him all the time he's older than me and uglier than me. But anyway, he took me to this New Walla event in Chico, Texas, at a Baptist church. And much like a lot of folks, about that 12 to 13 age, right, we all kind of start figuring out, I don't know what it is, but we have an encounter with Christ, usually somewhere around that junior high age. And so I did. I that was the first time I gave my life to Christ, was as a 12-year-old young man in the middle of Chico, Texas. Did I live my life like I should have? No, I made plenty of mistakes and kind of try to live life my own way. As I became a young adult, I had several encounters with Christ. But I will say this: I've always went back to Christ. I've always had a connection with Christ. Those daily interactions, daily time in the Word, and reading and praying, and also, I'm a firm believer that there's people on this earth for a reason, that make an impact on other people. And I've had those people across the years of my career, such as Randy Singleton and several others, several pastors. I've been real fortunate to have really good relationship with pastors and men that love me and care about me, and being involved in life groups and men's groups, and having a really transparent and vulnerable conversation. I've always had that. I don't know why, but I always had that. And I'm not scared to be vulnerable. Obviously, I've been a little vulnerable this morning with you. I'm not scared about that. I know God's going to use my story to help somebody else. If somebody looks at me for a different way because of my story, so be it. But my decision to follow Christ happened early on. It wasn't always 100%, no. But I will say this: there's never been a time where I've completely just fell off and try to live my life my own way in a rebellious nature since then. So many times, how that relates to law enforcement is, many times, as you know, we're put in positions, calls, traffic stops, whatever it is, that are very dangerous, and search warrants. I many times I prayed, I had the officers gather around. Let's pray before we hit this house. Let's pray before we go into this house on a disturbance. I prayed many a times going to those calls.
Oh yeah.
And I'm also prayed, in the back seat with somebody that has went through a bad time and they made a poor decision.
Yeah.
And so that impact on me, there's a reason it's called a thin blue line. It's because it's between good and evil. And it's really easy for law enforcement officers to lose that core value, is that we are on the side of good, and we got to stay on the side of good, and don't allow that poor company that we deal with all the time, that 90% of people we deal with all the time, to influence who we are and how we're going to live our lives. And so it's very difficult. I couldn't imagine being in this profession and not being a Christian. I don't know how people do it. I know they do it, but I don't know how. But it has saved me many, many times, and I've been on several calls where, I remember one particular call years ago. It was raining. It's about 10 o'clock at night. A young lady had a gun. She was threatening suicide, and I walked around the corner, and she saw me before I saw her, and the gun was up. And then I saw the light flicker, and hit the pistol, and the light reflect. And I was able to talk her down and get her some help. And I just thought, my Lord, it could have been easy target, and been in a very different situation. So I've used that relationship many a times, even in my office with my staff, and walk through some difficult times with our staff members here over the years. And 2009, just a month after my mom's death, Randy White.
I was going to say,
you know.
2009 had to have been a rough year for you.
Well, I went to 11 funerals in 2009.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, I don't know. I lost a lot of people. Um, you know, when my mom was killed in 2009 out on the side of the road, Randy White was there. He came and as I'm
Wow.
walking up on the scene, he came and grabbed me and he set me down in my car and he prayed with me on the side of the road.
Oh wow.
Uh, and so I firmly believe that Randy White was one of those people that God's used.
Hmm.
During that time, I just got remarried to my current wife, Tasha,
Hmm.
and she's been a complete godsend. She behind every good man, there's a better woman. I'm a firm believer in that because she is obviously has kept me in line, and she's a fantastic,
Hmm.
faithful, uh, God-seeking woman, and
Hmm.
so I'm blessed. I've been married to her now almost 15 years. So
Wow. Well, I think you've given one of the most important pieces of encouragement and tips or whatever about making your one decision, and that's having the Lord involved and going back to Him, being on your knees in prayer. I mean, you can't survive law enforcement. Actually, you can't survive anything in this life without Him. And I love how much you've shared about that. One last thing I do want to say before we go. I can't believe how long we've been talking. It's been wonderful.
hey, I could talk all day long. You might have just cut me off.
Me too. I love it. I love it. Well, I wanted to interview you today mainly because you work so hard to make not just Bridgeport, but Wise County overall a better and a safer place to live. And you also make, of course, they use the term humanizing the badge, but it almost demeans it a little bit because
Yeah.
you work so much harder beyond that. Like the little kids who may be in a situation where they're in an environment that the police officers are bad, and then they see
Yeah.
people like you to understand that no, they love you, they're trying to keep you safe, they're trying to do the right thing. And that's really important. But I was reminded before we excuse me, before we finish, several years ago, not long after 9/11, I went to New York City during Thanksgiving. And on Good Friday, we were literally on Times Square. And I had never, now I've lived in Texas almost all my life, and in smaller towns, the majority of that, could not believe the presence of SWAT uniforms and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
heavy artillery and all that. Of course, it was, like I said, it wasn't that long after 9/11, and it was kind of shocking. And at first I was like, is there something going on? And then I realized, no, they were just there to be a presence to deter any potential issues and to keep everyone safe. And so I looked up the definition of a peacemaker, and a peacemaker strives to create peace and attempts to reconcile things and people that are at odds with one another, while a peacekeeper often avoids people in conflict at all costs. Matthew 5:9, I've got a t-shirt. It says,
Mhm.
"Blessed are the peacemakers, so they shall be called sons of God." And I know that you work hard to train your team to be connected with the citizens. And at the end of the day, this is your role, is to be peacemakers. And on behalf of me and my family, we thank you so much for all you do. And I was thinking about Run with the Chief. I love that
You need to come on.
you do that every year. They run with the chief. It's literally a foot race, right?
Yeah, just for the block. I tell them, I
Right.
tell everybody, I said, you give me the block and then you can pass me. So,
Right.
you know, but yeah, that's a great thing you do. And you're so right. I mean, honestly, I haven't thought of it that way. The peacekeeper um, portion of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, Connie, I think that's what's wrong with law enforcement. If there's anything wrong with law enforcement, is law enforcement officers like me in the 90s, early 2000s, that don't understand that our job is so much bigger than taking people to jail.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so much broader. And quite frankly, the pressure that law enforcement is under, the microscope.
Hmm.
What you said, thank you for saying that. I think uh, the pressure I put on myself sometimes,
Hmm.
and I think that's where I have to remind myself, and I think God's reminding me often that I'll never leave you or forsake you.
Right.
I know that I have to dwell on that. I have to be intentional thinking that way. And also that greater is he that's in me, he that's in the world, right?
Hmm.
And so I have to be intentional in my mind and push my mind out and start thinking with my spirit, because the pressure is so great on law enforcement now. And then because everybody's looking at everything that we do all the time.
Hmm.
If an officer slips up and he does something or says something he shouldn't have on a video, they're only going to show that little small portion.
Hmm.
And as bad as we've made mistakes, we have to be very cautious and conscious of the fact that our job is so much greater, so much more broad. Randy Singleton used to tell us, don't minimize your position.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, you're a police officer in Bridgeport, Texas. Okay, well, no, you are a game changer in Bridgeport,
That's
Texas. You
true.
can
That's
change the
good.
community.
Uh-huh.
You know, how you talk, how you dress, how you act, how you treat people
Mhm.
can either make or break them. And so it's an everyday thing. Yesterday we had a leadership meeting, and we have those every 2 weeks. And my assignment to my staff is culture is so important. What we accept, what we allow determines how successful we are.
That's
We
it.
allow people to come here and be negative complainers or to go out and treat people poorly, then if we allow that, then we have ownership in what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to remind my team often. I think it's important for us to frequently visit our mission statement and
Yes.
what our why is. And so thank you for that. We've got a lot of things we do here that's outside of law enforcement. I want to just plug this one program.
Please.
Uh, we had a citizen come to me a couple of years ago and said, "Hey, I want to give you some money so you can give to people in the community that are in need." And I said, "I don't want cash, but if you want to do that, let's do gift cards." So food, Walmart, Lowe's, Brookshire's, gift cards. I don't want to handle cash, but you give me gift cards and we'll get them in the hands of people that need it. And so routinely, our officers take these gift cards and they just randomly give them to people that they know because they know best, right?
Oh,
They
yeah.
know a lot better than what I know out on the
Mm-hmm.
street. They know who's
Mm-hmm.
suffering
Mm-hmm.
because they're in the battle every day. And
Uh-huh.
so it's called a MAD, okay, Making a Difference Impact Program. And so we give these cards out to individuals that maybe are like me, right? When I was a kid,
Yeah.
they're in a situation where they don't have food, they don't have the things they need to survive, and that has been huge. We've had
That is
churches jump on board
incredible. Yeah.
and buy cards and bring them to us, and so that has nothing to do with law enforcement, right?
Mm-mm.
But it has something to do with making an impact and making our community better, and that's our goal at the end of the day. So
Wow, that is incredible. I love that. Well, there's so much we could keep talking.
I know.
I did want to say I do appreciate and I was going to ask you about it earlier, but didn't want to I didn't want to stop you because it was
Yeah.
so good. But the fact that you do have a leadership program, again, I've been around other departments that didn't. And I believe it's our responsibility to continually work to develop the next generation. And
Yeah,
everyone on the face of this planet is a leader somewhere. It may
absolutely.
be in our home, it could just be in our little sphere of influence, but everyone is a leader. And if we operate in those principles, we can make a huge difference. So for you to train your officers and to train your people that it's so much more than just riding around in a squad car pulling people over, I think is just phenomenal. So was that a conscious decision you made to try to do that, or was that something how did it come about?
Well, I think, so it's kind of been a work in progress, right? So uh, I tell Randy Singleton this all the time. I said, that chair right across the hall there, which was my old office, was nice and comfortable. That thing was warm, never got hot, never got cold. I didn't have to make any critical decisions. Uh, and so, if somebody was mad at the police department, they were mad at the chief. They wasn't mad at me, right? So,
Right.
but I kid with him all the time because, sitting from afar, you think you know what you're talking about, or you think you know what you would do. We don't know what we don't know. So there's that too. But
Exactly.
when I got this position, I think Randy did a fantastic job mentoring me and leading me and preparing me from personnel to budget to operations. Uh, I think all of that was fantastic. Uh, so I wanted to take his foundation and make it better. Uh, and yes, I'm a very competitive person to a fault, but it wasn't for that reason. It was because I look at I try to look at the big picture, and I want to be involved with the sheriff's office. I think for the first time in a long time, we have a really good relationship with the sheriff's office. We have a good relationship with Decatur PD. We have a good relationship with Rome. Rome has a fantastic chief now, Eric Davis. He's a great man. He actually used to be my son's captain at Coppell.
Oh, wow.
But it takes all of us in realizing that I can't change this community. But if I can get the sheriff's office to buy in, if I can get Decatur PD, and if we can all work together in concert, then we can make a great impact. And so
Yeah.
it is for my staff, it's the frequent conversations, always talking about what we stand for and who we are. I can write that on the wall, but if we don't live it, that's insufficient. And so it has to be true, it has to be complete, and it has to be an intentional effort. So yeah, even if we don't feel like it. Yesterday I had my leadership meeting. I told you before I had 6 meetings yesterday. That was the last of the 6. I didn't feel like meeting with them. I
No.
was like, I'm sick and tired. But it was on the schedule, and we have to stay true to who we are.
Yes.
And if we're going to do that, we got to have those critical conversations. And sometimes those conversations are not good. They're going to be heated conversations with the staff members, and that's okay as long as we walk out in uniform, walk out, and we have this agreement of what we're going to do. And so I'm blessed to have a really good staff. I have Connie, you'll freak out when I tell you this. I have officers that have been in this business 30 years.
Wow.
I have officers been in this business 30 days. And so I have a wide spectrum of officers from different backgrounds, different ages. Fort Worth PD, Grapevine, Weatherford, Coppell, Flower Mound. And then I have people just like me that this is the first place to work. This is the only thing they know. So it's great to have that diversity.
Yes.
We have more female officers than we've ever had before.
That's incredible.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Anyway, I can go on and on and
Oh,
on.
I know. I know. Well, I guess my light just went out, so I guess it's time to stop. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a sign of it.
Well, I want you to, if you don't mind, close us out in prayer, and then I'll finish it up. Okay?
Absolutely. God, thank you for today, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity to come and serve here. And Lord, thank you for just Connie and her support, her family. Thank you for her heart. Thank you for everything that she does and the connections and her personality. And God, I just thank you for this town. I thank you for our officers, our staff members. God, I pray for wisdom for all of us, God, that God, through our thoughts, our actions, that we may honor you. God, keep us grounded, keep us humble, but God, keep us motivated and intentional to serve you. God, give us the things that we need to be a light in this dark world. I thank you for our families. I pray for protection over us, God. And thank you for the things you're going to do in our lives ahead. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been a great conversation. I've loved it. To find out more about the Bridgeport Police Department, you can find them on Facebook or go to their website. And if you're considering a job in law enforcement, maybe reach out to Chief Stanford. He already has a great team, and I know he's always looking to develop more. And there's not just those in uniform. There's a lot of jobs not in uniform that help serve the public. So thank you, Chief. I really appreciate you. And thank you all for joining us. So keep in mind to like, share, comment, whatever, and follow us. Again, I'm Dr. Connie Swain, and you've been listening to the One Decision podcast. Have a great day.